any other technical errors that are going on here this morning. So we appreciate you joining us. We did have I believe, a record number, as some of you may have heard, that had registered and anticipating, expecting to be in attendance here today. Just know yesterday, as we're working and anticipating the governor, that we received some of the documentation about 15 minutes prior to the governor going live, and since then we've really been sifting through and trying to figure out for you what this means and how do you best effectively and efficiently move forward. So really, as we head into our agenda today, if we would forward into the agenda, if we could, you're going to see what we have before you today. Again, information around the executive order. We're gonna chunk it into what we know, what we're seeking further clarification on, and what can be done right now. Just know you'll hear this later from Eric as well, but we will be meeting later today with the Department of Health to find out more information in that area around seeking further clarification. You know, how does that pertain to models? And then those updates are our models that are in place, and we're really starting on January 4th. We know that, and what does that mean for us? Just an update on competitive section placement, COVID information and calendar dates, along with planning on another LEAD network meeting into next Tuesday as well. We do plan on going a little longer than half an hour today with the amount of information that we currently have. So we're going to do our best to, again, give that to you as easily as we can. We have to be patient right now at the Minnesota State High School League and working through the information that we have, working with the Department of Health, working with the Department of Education. We ask for your patience as well, as we'll get you that information. A lot of good questions coming in from last night to tonight. We'll try and answer as many of those today, but we're still seeking information as well. Let's really move on to executive order as we know it, 20-103. And I'm going to invite Eric into the conversation here as well. But I think it's really important that you notice what was recognized within the order. So these are excerpts or items from the order itself, and they're really recognizing, again, what you do and how important it is in the development of opportunities, both physically and from a mental health perspective for all of our students. And again, I would say this, and I'm going to ask Eric to chime in too and lead us, but we need balance right now, right? We're going to get started on the 4th. Not sure when we're going to start competitions. We'll continue to say that, but we need balance. We need to get back to our controlled environments and with our protocols and guidance to make sure that we can show those benefits that are recognized within the order itself. Eric, anything you'd like to chime in with as I mentioned, at least the top 2 bullets there?
Yeah, I think you're right on the right page, Bob. And good morning, everybody, and thanks for taking time to be with us here. There's a lot of information, and this backdrop information I think is important and critical as we step forward. And I think it has a lot to do. Our start date has a lot to do with obviously where the number of cases, the hospitalizations, and unfortunately the deaths that have been occurring here in the state of Minnesota. And so it does look like statistically things are moving in a better direction right now, yet we're still quite a bit higher than when we had fall seasons going on. And so I think it's a couple of things that were assisted us in being able to move forward, and that is continuing to advocate for the positive experiences that our students have and what that means to them in their lives. And at the same time, being really clear with our state partners that our association and our league is going to do the very best job in providing the safest experience that we can. And so that balance of the risk that we take by having these activities in action needs to really be tempered and do the very best job that we can, because there are risks with every situation where people come together. And I think that's kind of that last bullet. When we have students together, them having a potential for transmission creates a concern, and we need to do our very best to try to minimize that to the greatest extent possible. If you want to go to the next slide, it just kind of continues along that messaging of how is it that you within your school and your programs are going to work with your coaches, families, and students to make sure and minimize that risk, limit that to the greatest extent possible. And you know, Bob will talk more about this, but expect that as we continue to go forward, that there's going to be maybe more restrictions than what we've had in the past. And the key with that is if we can start small, start careful, be effective in getting our seasons underway, we're going to be able to return to games and competitions, and we're going to be able to bring our seasons to conclusions. And we recognized this last fall as we got toward the end of them, that got more and more difficult. And so we just want to make sure that we do the very best we can, and we're going to continue to work forward on that internally, but also with the experts at MDH, as well as our sports medicine advisory, to continue to fine tune and bring more information there. So I think that's just an important backdrop. As we step into the executive order, what do we know? Taking a look at this slide, I think, first of all, we need to understand that Executive Order 20-103 is not complete in and of itself. It is actually a secondary piece that extends and modifies 2099. So you really need to lay them side by side to get the best information. And so for our schools, what does it mean? Prior to January 4th, we cannot have in-person activities or athletics of any kind. And that is clearly laid out. There are portions within 2103 that actually extend out to the following week. You'll read it and it'll say through January 10th, but there's a carve out for us to begin practice on January 4th. And that's found in the youth sports guidance that says that practice can start. But in the meantime, and as we go into what a lot of people are anticipating for a holiday break, no meetings, captains' practices, open gyms, et cetera, are able to be held within your schools. And again, the school facilities remain closed for activities and athletics until January 4th. And again, that's the extension of 2099, which is what we've been working through here for the last 4 weeks. So there are some places where you've heard about the non-school gymnasiums, fitness centers, et cetera, where people go for their fitness workouts are going to open in a very limited fashion. And that is not our schools that are called out within those. And so I think that that's important. The key there is at the bottom, our in-person practices can beginning on Monday, January 4th. And at that time, we are hopeful to be able to get our seasons underway. And there's more information that we're going to need around each one of these things as we go forward. But that's the bullet points as far as how we get started. And Bob, other things that you want to highlight here?
No, I think really, really well said, Eric. And again, the no's, right? Like no open gyms, no in-person meetings, no captain's practices, and let's get that controlled environment. I think one of our stressors, continues to be that when we're together, our guidance and our protocols are good, but we have to right now make sure that I know the frustrating behaviors that are out there with some of your student athletes and parents, whatever they may be doing, your inability to govern that, right? We have to control the environment that to the best that we can right now, getting back to where we can be. And what you see here will assist us, I believe, in doing so. I would also note that, Eric, we have heard from your admin teams, right? Especially your superintendents around clarification on this, hoping that they can control their own environment in preparation for school beginning again for many of them on the 4th. So, Eric, I think we can go ahead and move forward. And just noting here that some are noting maybe they were kicked out and had to get back into the meeting again. We apologize for that. And we're over 400 at today's meeting. Moving on to the next slide, if we could.
Or if you're talking to us, you're on mute, so we're missing you. You weren't before, but you are now.
It's a challenging day today. Bob, just a quick question here about weight rooms. We're seeing questions about other types of facilities other than just gyms in school.
Yeah, I would say if it's outside of the school day, Laura, we shouldn't be utilizing it. So it's if it's a class and if you're in person and that's a weight training class during that school day, that's a facility that can be used much like your classrooms. If it's outside of the day, if it's athletics or activities related outside of that school day, that we should not be utilizing those facilities at that time or at this time. And I don't think that has changed, which is really a good segue, Laura, into where we're at. Let's not forget where we're currently at in our winter season. Please remember that dance remains in season. Their choreography, their virtual practice, many are done with choreography now, but again, they're prioritizing the social, emotional health and well-being of their student athletes, but it's still virtual. And remember our upcoming winter sports that now begin on the 4th, that they're still in virtual access, right? A little bit different, should be inclusive to all, shouldn't be or cannot be required focus on that team building, those individual team workouts, what those look like, skill specific, system specific, watching a game together, right? And pointing out what those teams do on offense or defense are all things that you can do. Again, the concepts within the sport, we're going to get back to opening that up again on the 4th, and we're looking forward to that. The fine arts, again, we should not forget the guidance on that. They do not have that defined regular season, and all contact must be virtual in nature. Eric, anything I missed there?
No, I think it's really, and again, back to the fact that this order is an extension of 2099. And so until we get to January 4th, really things don't change for us within our schools and our activities. So I think as we transition to the next slide, we started with what we know, and now there's a number of things that we're continuing to look for more clarification on and to get these really, in place so that we can assist you in making the best decisions and do that administrative piece. Again, remember that there's 2 executive orders that go together, and then there's at least 3 other documents that the state has out, and those are the planning guide and the youth sports guidance, and also a safe learning plan piece that all you need to look through to try to pull this information together. So in some of these cases, we're asking questions in which we may not be sure which one's in place or trying to get that figured out. But Bob, I know you're going to start with the first couple bullets, so I'll turn it to you to start this slide.
Yeah, and many questions again coming around, what does this mean, right? So we're in the model now where we're going to begin practice on the 4th, yet we don't know what that date is for competition. I think Eric, we've said it before, and Eric will touch when I turn it back over to him on our meeting this afternoon at 1 p.m. And what we're going to advocate for and what we're looking for in that model as well. Our region secretaries, many of them are here today, along with you, want to know what those postseason dates and formats look like. And we get that and know that. We're building those as we speak and working on facilities and availability of those. And we will have those to you as soon as we know what they are and when we can begin competition. It really relates back to that first bullet. Many competition around masks, and many of you done a really nice job of noting within the new executive order that it notes masks along with face shields for teachers. And how does that apply to coaches and student athletes? Again, there's language within there that makes us believe that masks are going to need to be worn in practice and possibly competition as well for our student athletes. And so we're seeking further clarification on that as well. Eric, I'm going to turn it back over to you and talk a little bit about maybe our meeting this afternoon, but also how it relates back to learning models that we were pretty fixed on here this fall.
Yeah, there's a number of points that we need to continue to work toward getting really solid answers. And so Bob mentions a meeting this afternoon. Our staff, a number of them, our directors for winter specifically, are going to be meeting with members of the Department of Health to talk about our guidance again and really try and dig into this deeper. At the same time, we continue to maintain our contacts with both Commissioner Tarek Tomes, who kind of leads the youth sports side of things, as well as the Deputy Commissioner in Education as well, just as really good contacts and ways to get information as we can. What we're understanding is moving right now is that the connection between our learning models and whether or not we can have activity and athletic participation is likely moving more localized. And so there was some really specific guidance relative to that in the past, yet those have created some additional challenges. And so some of you have asked questions about if we're still in distance learning, can we have activities? And we're getting, again, better clear information on that, but there's a sense that that's moving to being more disconnected and really looking at things. Again, remember that the governor's goal is to start with getting our youngest students back in-person learning and then continue that progression to moving our older students back into school as well. With the extension of 2099, our interstate co-op participation is a question mark. Again, for those that are involved in that, that's when our Minnesota schools are in a co-op with schools across the border, likely either North Dakota or South Dakota. And those students have been sitting on the sideline right now as we've gone through the pause. And so at what point are we able to get those students back participating, because their seasons are in action right now in those other states. And so we're working again with the state level to make sure we get a good interpretation and give the clearest information we can. School pools is a question mark in the guidance and within the Safe Schools piece. school pools remain closed. They're considered a public pool, and that's clearly delineated. And so this is where there's a little bit of a crossover in terms of dates, where we're allowed to start practice, yet the extension of 2099 goes through one more week till January 10th. And so we're looking for more information on what does that mean for our boys swim and dive teams, and how do they get started on January 4th, and how soon can they get into water? And so we're digging into that a little bit deeper as well. And then we are in the process of looking at each one of our winter sports guidance and information documents. Want to update the dates the best that we can, but beyond that, we want to take a look at the newest guidance, talk with the Department of Health, and continue to formulate the best plan for us to bring our sports back into action. Again, remember what our goal is and has been all along the way. We want to have an opportunity for every one of our activities and athletic programs to have a season this year in the safest way that we can do that. And that's where we're going to continue our focus. And please know that the meeting today is not an ending date. It is a starting date of review and taking a look at that information. And it does take a fair amount of time to get through all of it to put it together, but that will be communicated back to you when that's put in place. As we turn to the next slide, I think this goes back to you, Bob, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, let's back up just a moment again, right? A lot of questions around the pools. Boys swimming will begin on January 4th, right? Whether or not that we're able to utilize the pools, that's where we're seeking clarification. So a coach does have access in person to swimming on January 4th. Again, we'll be finding out when we can get access to the pools and how does this executive order apply to our programs in our school pools and the facilities that we're able to use. And then I'm going to give you an example. If masks change, if masks have to be worn in games and or practices, that is something that you will see within the guidance. We want to utilize our opportunity this afternoon again to advocate for our programs with the Department of Health and better understand what their expectations are going to be to assist us not only in starting practice, but starting competition. We know it's related. We know there's a lot of questions around there, but we believe that we're ready to go as soon as we're given the green light to begin participating. And we're going to have the best protocols and guidance in place for our models, so you're able to begin that competition. Otherwise, I think we can go ahead and move ahead. Here's what's been extended under 2099, right? And again, Eric, said you almost have to lay them side by side to really understand what it is that can be done now within the new executive order of 20-103. So your virtual practices can continue at this time, right? Prepare to begin in-person practices. So when we met with our liaisons on Monday, they said, almost 2-to-1 that we're ready to begin as soon as they tell us with practices. Yet some said, we still need some preparation to be able to do so. What does it mean with student athletes coming back into your buildings and your facilities ready to go on January 4th, working with your admin team, your COVID response team? What does that look like within your building, and how are they going to work with student athletes, and do they understand what participation means for your student athletes? And then let's get back to controlling that environment, right, and minimizing the exposure. And we have an opportunity to show, just like we did in the fall, given the opportunity, when we have opportunity, we're going to be responsible, and we're going to do it as well and even better than others, right, to be able to do so. I know that there's frustration out there when you're seeing teams or what appears to be teams or groups of students participating across state borders. That's very frustrating, right? For many of you that had contacted us, and we're working with those schools, oftentimes schools do not have that governance, do not have the reach or even the knowledge that that's occurring. And oftentimes it's those parents that are doing so. And we're working with those schools. Again, we need to reinforce and teach behaviors that are going to, once we get started, that we're going to be able to continue to do so. And we'll implement those protocols and guidelines that are in place, and we'll get those updated ASAP. Once we have a better idea of how high is that bar going to need to be for us to begin not only practicing, but playing. And we'll get you those out to you as soon as possible. Later, we'll talk about LEAD next week and next steps in communication. The communication will not just take place during LEAD, right? As we learn, it may be emails to you and to you first to the best of our ability. Eric or Laura, anything I missed here? And Laura, I would invite you into the conversation, and talk a little bit about the new documentation and where that's been updated as well for our school administrators. You're muted, Laura.
I don't see all the same commands as you guys do when I'm trying to share my screen. We'll talk about where some of these COVID documents are a little bit later in the presentation, Bob.
All right, excellent. Good, thank you. Eric, anything else here before we really move into what this means for starting on January 4th?
No, I think you're right on the right track. I think there's a lot of question around our activities and when we could potentially be able to move into competition. I know that's part of the model that we're going to look at, along with the table of weeks and games. That's part of it. I think what people need to know is that we have bylaws that indicate when it's appropriate to begin our competitions based on the start of practice. And so obviously that's a starting point for our conversations, is around we're starting on January 4th. If we can move forward according to our bylaws, that's probably the best case for our schools. We're used to that progression of practices and how we get to that point. That's really kind of a target, and that's what the model shows. But Bob will talk more about the part that's unknown and why we're not able to define that quite yet.
Yeah, and just I see some information from Susie and Laura too. A lot of questions around pods. We have not heard that pod sizes have changed, but if they do, again, that's something that we'll update in our guidance and protocols moving forward, and we're prepared to do so. So here's a little, this is actually a distorted view of maybe what you've seen in the models, but here's what starting on January 4th means, right? So you're gonna notice this is a little bit bigger. We're missing some spring sports down at the bottom, but it really lines up pretty well with Model 2 in terms of starting on January 4th. So the salmon colored areas were designated for practice within this model. We don't know when that salmon color is going to end right now. Again, you heard us say that we're going to advocate and ask that we start participating as soon as we can to be able to do so. And maybe that will end right where it is right now, or maybe it will be extended, we're not sure. But we hope that it's right about where we're at. So as we move into the cream colored area, so if the salmon went as possible, right, or as designed here, in many of the sports you're going to see between 8 to 13 weeks, right, or 10 to 13 weeks. And then if you remove that 2 weeks, or that 10 days quite often, that is what you have left to compete. So that cream colored area, you still have enough weeks to be able to get into, and we'll get to competitions next, that designated amount of time. Again, that's at 2 competitions per week for now, for the time being. That worked very well for us. Minimizes exposure. It also allows for time in between games. Anything you can do in those areas to go back-to-back opponents, the same opponents, not going back-to-back games on continuous days. Those are things that allow us to keep playing and keep moving and not disrupting or interrupting that season. If you would just take a look at boys hockey, girls basketball, down those bottom 4, right? So we get started, you have that cream area and it's 18 games. We'll show you that in a minute again. But you have that cream area for all of your regular season games. As I look at this, really that green area starting on March 15th, right here, is designated for something else right now. Could be postseason section play, could be regular season combination with postseason play, but we're working on that right now. So really the last date that you should schedule regular season games up to right now would be the 13th of March. And I believe I have that correct, Laura. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are. Yep.
If any of that green week opens up for maybe games that were missed during the year due to a disruption or interruption, that would go back to you again, but we're working with region secretaries and tournament managers to make sure that that's in place. And then you have that week 2 really for that would be section play designated as well. And then what might the tournament following section play look like, and staggering those dates as well. So the question is around when would we start 3 contests right now? As I see it, 3 contests in those last 2 weeks for those 2 sports would really be starting the week of March 1st, extending through the week of March 8th. That is where you would have those opportunities for 3 contests. Again, I'm going to recommend that you leave flexibility there. So if you lose a game early on, you're able to make it up. There's others that are talking about we're gonna design our schedules into weeks. So if we lose week 1 for whatever reason, maybe we move week 1 to the end of our season now on a time where we have that flexibility and begin with week 2. Those are some ideas of how maybe conferences or parts of the state are looking at their schedules. Again, we do not know when we're going to begin competition. We know that's frustrating, but this is what the season looks like. Some are trying to figure out, well, how many games can we play then? And Laura, if we go on to that next slide, what we really know here, again, we look at our regular season length, right? And then we look at Model 2 as Laura has in red, right? So we now know the number of weeks that we have. Not sure when we're starting to play, but then to the far right is also the number of contests that you are allowed to play. So as we looked at hockey and basketball as those examples, Laura, if you could go back again to that model just again, you have those designated weeks in cream to schedule those 18 games or 18 contests. We did leave a couple of the spring sports down there below as well, because you see there, we're preserving that time for our spring sports, and you can see some crossover and things like that. But the latest we show that we would be going here would be into the week of April 5th, and we're going to do our best to honor that, again, working with facilities to make sure that we have availability for those tournaments and or play. Laura, you do a really nice job of saying some things differently sometimes, or Eric, anything I missed here in really trying to show where we're at with the model, again, not knowing when we're going to start competition.
Just clarifying these number of weeks, those of you who are counters are saying, but basketball really is an extra week out here. These greens have been added on top of this. And again, that's just come along to give us more flexibility as we work to put tournaments together. The 13 weeks is supposed to represent from the beginning to the end, and the end really here is expected to be here, but to provide flexibility, these greens are out here. So these numbers are a little bit off on that piece.
And a really good question, Laura, again, and Susie sent this to me. So other than dance, these seasons begin on January 4th, right? So our start date, the season begins on January 4th, knowing some districts have said they're not going to start till later into this season, right? We recognize this, return to participation noted that as well. So again, this is when your decision your local decision for school districts can begin for those sports. Dance is in season, but they are participating virtually. Good question on that. Anything else here, Laura? Otherwise, we can continue to move forward. All right, transitioning really from the executive orders, starting over with our winter season, really trying to get you details again, seeking clarification yet this afternoon and communicating as quickly as we can. Also know that we have competitive section placement, many questions out there around co-ops and what schools need to do and what don't they need to do in the meantime. I'm not expecting that you be able to read this timeline, know that this was sent and it's still available. I have 2 copies of these printed out, right? One in my home office and one in my work office. Again, looking at these dates, they're located under the MSHSL resources, and you can see the arrow to the right, what that looks like, and it's noted as the classification, competitive section placement information. Remember, we're also doing the admin regions this year. This gives you an idea on those dates along with district football. And great job for those of you that have already filled out your school information form for football. Really helps us out as we begin planning and looking at that. And know that that's going on at the same time in different ways, right? We still need those MDE numbers as even when we work into some of our districts as well. Schools want to know where they're going to compete in the postseason and where their classification is. before they really want to know what their district is, right? In some cases, it goes hand in hand. In others, they have a pretty good idea of where they're at. So this has been a helpful visual, I think. Know where it's located, and it is on under your MSHSL resources. All right, so Laura, we're going to go move on, I believe, from there. Talk about the documents, where things have been updated, and what it looks like to them on their website, please.
Right, and just to note that on this competitive section page also, that link is where you'll find all of the forms that you may need to work with throughout this process. So they may hit you via an email also, but at that point where you need to say, I just need to find all of the information about classification and competitive section, they are on a single page within your portal. Moving on just to a couple of where do I find type pieces. As you know, COVID information keeps coming out from all sides, and we continue to try to work to get the right information to the right people. So a couple of places on the website where people find various things, and this may be helpful for your families, your coaches, others within your school. We do have a tab up at the very top of the homepage called COVID-19 information. That is some real high-level general information for the public. Likely not where you're going to find yours, but where people in the public are going to find just what is the State High School League doing around COVID-19. Also on the public side, each of the activity-specific pages, for example, the boys basketball page, has anything related to boys basketball. So a parent, an official, someone without a login to our website could go there to find the guidance and information documents for boys basketball. For those of you with logins, and that would be our ADs and coaches, underneath the blue sports-specific accordion band, you're going to find things related just to that sport. So as you work with your coaches, this is where they're going to find the most current and most specific information just for their sport. This is also true for fine arts folks. So if you have not yet gotten your fine arts people in and registered and have a dashboard set up for them, please continue to work on that, because those guidance and those guidance documents are also under their music or their speech link here. And then again, for you as an AD who just needs to see everything in one place at some times, on your dashboard, there's a link that says Sports Guidance and Information COVID related. This is an incredibly long list, but it is everything that we've put out COVID related, and it'll help you find it all in one place. So again, many of those documents, for example, the boys basketball guidance and information document, there are multiple ways to get it. If you are a public person, it would be out on the activity page and you're getting to the same document. Your basketball coaches are likely getting to it through this, and you as an AD can come here and find all of them, or if you just need basketball, there's your spot to get to it too. A note also about projected calendar dates, and really talking here about both current year, but even more about upcoming years. Many people throughout this pause seem to be starting to think about next school year and what they can schedule when they think things are going to be back to a little bit more normal. There's on the website, there is a central calendar that has been developed that has what we're saying are all of the important State High School League dates on it. It is a large spreadsheet that can be sorted and filtered in different ways, and it is updated with the most current projected dates for different events and activities. It is on the calendar tab up on the top, but it's also on your dashboard that's called the central calendar. Printed copies of things get outdated and things change. The place to always look is to that central calendar. The one that we are aware of right now is next year's 2021-2022 girls and boys basketball dates in the 3-year calendar that many of you have on your desk. That's a printed calendar. Those dates for girls and boys basketball for next year are incorrect. They have changed since that calendar came out. So again, make sure that you're going to that projected calendar and know that it does change. I would suggest that it is not something you print because again, it changes as dates change. We did update it with January 4th as the first date of practice for this year's winter one. So those are in there and current also. So with that, Bob, I'm going to turn it back to you to set up where we're at on lead heading into some holiday weeks here.
Great, thanks, Laura. And then I use my 3-year calendar all the time, right? Not only are next year's dates not accurate, this year's aren't either, right? We know that. And things are going to continue to change. So use that online digital calendar to the best of your ability, and that's where we will be updating those important dates. We know information is going to change, right? There's a lot of questions that both of us continue to have right now when we think about things like face mask, shields, pools, and when we start playing. And those are all questions that we have. We'll get that information to you as quickly as we can, but we believe we need to meet next week as well on Tuesday, December 22nd, our same time. And again, thank you for the 400 plus that have hung with us here today as we're over our half an hour. Between the 22nd and when we come back and start participating on the 4th of January, and thank goodness we're into 2021 finally, and we can say goodbye to 2020. If we need to get information out to you in a recorded version of LEAD or some alternative methods like we've done, we'll do that as well. And then we'll come back on January 7th. And really what you can do between now and then. What are the messages that are going out to your student athletes? How do we get them ready to go, prepared to come back, create those controlled environments? And just imagine everybody starting on at the same time, healthy in a place where we're ready to go, right? And how do we keep playing? And not just through March, but we have to look at maybe at a 2 weeks at a time or a month at a time. But we have to make sure our student athletes hear that we have an opportunity before us. Let's be responsible. Let's work towards participating, getting back together on the 4th, ready to go. And we're going to have those guidelines and protocols ready for you as soon as we have that information. And we hope we have a productive meeting this afternoon with MDH. And again, we'll get you the outcomes from that if they're relevant and assist you in moving forward. Eric, anything further before we let this group go and back to their daily business?
I just think it's important that every one of you know that we're feeling the same thing that you are. The sooner we get information, the better we're able to do our job. And know that this has been exhausting. And as we look backwards, and Bob did a nice job in his Connect article, just talking about the journey that we've been on, and know that there are times when we get pretty tired and there's an awful lot on our plates, and we're in a pause, and at the same time we're ramping back up and getting excited to get our kids back in programs and back participating, and everyone pulling together to do that as well as we can is going to be the key to our success. And so we appreciate all of your communication and always looking to try to make sure that we give you the best and most accurate information that we have at the time that we have it, and we'll continue to do that. And that's all you can do with your schools as well. So thanks so much for all of your work, and certainly we want to be ready to go as soon as we can get started. So Bob, I'll let you wrap it up.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Thanks for all your work. Thanks for being patient, and we'll have more information as soon as we have it and it's ready to go for you. Have a great day. We'll see you next Tuesday before we head into a break. Take care.